the context of Hyrox, how do you think about pure strength versus muscular endurance? Like, do you feel like there is much point to training like very low rep ranges in strength training for Hyrox, or do you think it should be more muscular endurance focused?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I've thought a lot about this. This is a tough one for me. I am biased towards running where I think we use the weight room, in my opinion, to get things you're not going to get from your main sport, which is like the Hyrox, in my opinion, is where you're going to get the muscular endurance. So I would say I would try to get muscular endurance from your Hyrox sessions where you're doing like your sled specific work, like your wall ball work that's specific to Hyrox. And then I would use more of like the weight room to focus on qualities you're not going to get from that, which I think is like a maximum strength, maximum
Hmm.
power. So I would focus more like the tendon stiffness, which I would focus more on the pure weight room personally on lower reps, heavy weight, and try not to accumulate fatigue. So maybe staying away from failure, but heavy weight, low reps in the pure weight room to increase maximum strength. Because I just think we have a ton of good literature that increasing the maximum strength, increasing tendon stiffness is gonna have potential benefits for durability, and also just like running efficiency. And I would use the Hyrox specific stuff to get your muscle endurance.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Um, and then in terms of like endurance training, zone two, I've seen you put out some stuff around zone two training before. Is there what do you think people get wrong about zone two training?
Yeah, I've heard some interviews on your podcast, which I thought had some interesting takes too about like threshold versus VO2 max work and the training zones.
Hmm.
I think I'm gonna be biased here, but yeah, I don't think it I don't think the body knows training zones, right? Like I think your body knows stress and training stress and recovery and adaptation. So I think what most people get wrong about zone two is like people think these magical adaptations happen if I'm in zone two or if I'm in below threshold or above threshold or if I'm VO2 max versus threshold. And I think the body doesn't know the difference. I think the body knows stress and fatigue. So what I think people get wrong with zone two is like there's nothing magical about zone two leading to specific mitochondrial adaptations or specific fat oxidation adaptations, like becoming a better fat burner that you wouldn't get from higher intensity work. The pure magic of zone two is, or zone one is it's easy. And when you work out easy, like a long 2 hour easy run is gonna have a less fatigue response than like 1 hour going super hard, right? Like I feel worse when I run as hard as I can for an hour than if I go out for 90 minutes very easy jog. And so why that's important is because if we're working with these athletes now who are accumulating a ton of training stress in a week and who are very endurance trained, whose zone tune is very high up, close to their VO2 max anyway. So like these higher sessions come with a lot of fatigue. It's like it doing a lot of low intensity work allows you to accumulate a lot of training volume without a huge fatigue cost or a smaller fatigue cost. And that's where zone two or zone one even really shines. We know to be an elite Hyrox athlete, to be an elite runner, you have to run a lot in a week. Running a lot in a week creates durability in the joint tissues and improves my overall durability. That volume may lead to some specific adaptations, skill. Like the more I run, the more efficient I'll be at running. And so it lets you accumulate a lot of volume without a lot of fatigue. But all things created equal, if I did the same amount of work in a week at zone four, for example, or higher intensity versus zone two, and I could recover, you're going to get better adaptations from higher intensity work because that's a bigger training stress. But as long as you can recover, that's the key part. But if I did zone four, zone five for several hours every day, I wouldn't recover. I would get hurt. Something would happen. So that's why zone two, especially if you're accumulating a ton of training volume in a week, is important. So in between those big zone four, zone five, or the higher intensity days, I can still do things to accumulate volume, but I can recover. And that's where the lower intensity, I think, really shines in, where higher intensity just has such a fatigue cost, but at the same time, it will lead to bigger adaptations for the same time spent trading if you could recover.
Okay. Okay. And I guess if you're not doing huge training volume, then
I
uh,
don't, I don't
that
think it really
that
matters.
that
Yeah.
time would be better spent at higher intensity. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what, like, a lot of people are arguing now too, and I totally agree. It's like, if you can recover and you're not gonna get hurt, if you're only working out, like, 1 or 2 hours a week, like, I think you're better off doing more intensity.
Hmm. Okay. Okay. Um, uh, like combining those two topics that we just talked about, like strength training and endurance training, which we do both of for Hyrox. Is it are you a believer in the interference effect, and like do you think like you should separate those
Mm.
sessions by a certain amount of hours and things like that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think historically, people would argue that interference effect was, again, on the cell signaling level, where it's like you have these two major pathways, AMPK, which is like the aerobic pathway that produces mitochondria and all these things. And then you have like mTOR, which is like the strength, the bodybuilding, like building muscle pathway. And historically, we thought they block each other. And I don't think that's the case. I don't think we have good evidence for that. I think the interference effect is overplayed. I think the real reason we see this interference effect is just because of fatigue. And I think it's a manifestation of fatigue. There was an interesting paper that just came out that showed that, like, having bigger muscles isn't going to be ideal for endurance because the oxygen has farther to travel or to get to the actual muscle. But my main point is the fatigue, where training quality is really important to build strength and muscle. Like, progressively overloading with heavier weights, going close to failure, working out hard, training quality is important to build muscle. Lifting heavy weights at a high quality is important to build strength. But if I'm accumulating tons of running and then I'm going right into strength training, I'm going to be tired. And if I'm just doing a ton of that in a week anyway, I'm going to be tired to the point where that fatigue isn't going to allow me to have as high quality sessions, in my opinion, for strength training, which could hurt the overall adaptations, and vice versa. If I'm lifting so much, if I'm doing so high rock stuff, it's just inevitable that you're gonna accumulate some fatigue, and I don't think fatigue's a bad thing. Like, I think you can actually handle a ton of fatigue without it really having an effect. That's why people are having these huge training loads, but that fatigue potentially is gonna hurt the quality of the training sessions. But I do think the body will optimize for, like, one or the other just because, like, carrying a ton of muscle mass isn't gonna be make you a great marathoner. Like, there's a reason the best marathoners are very slim. And being extremely slim, like, you're not gonna be a good bodybuilder, right? So, like, the body is gonna optimize based on the stimulus you give it. But I think from an interference effect, I don't think it's really caused by signaling as much as just, like, fatigue hurting the quality of other sessions, which is gonna hurt the stimulus and energy availability for that session.
Is there
But I think we should to answer the question, sorry, to make it practical, I think we should spread out the sessions so your body has time to recover, so it can have as much high quality like strength sessions and high quality run sessions. Like, I don't know if you've seen the WOD Science guys, but he does a great job explaining, like, I do like having like endurance only focus sessions and like a strength only focus session later in the day or the next day, because then I feel fresher for that session and can have higher quality, which I think will lead to better adaptations.
Yeah. Okay. We've had Gomar from Wood
So,
Science on
yeah,
here
so
actually.
that's
Yeah.
exactly what him and I have talked about. Like, spreading them out just allows each one to be a higher quality,
Hmm.
and because you're less fatigue, and that's going to lead to better adaptations.
Okay. Is there this is maybe a bit open ended question, but is there any like piece of research that you'd really like to see in this area, in the area of Hyrox training that doesn't exist at the moment that you'd love to see?
Oh man, that's really fascinating. Him and I have talked about this a little bit, but I think it would be interesting just to actually get all the Hyrox athletes into a lab. Like, they've done a little bit of this and just like profile what makes the best guys and or females and males in Hyrox, and profile them against other athletes where we measure their maximum force, their VO2 max, like their thresholds, their rate of force development, power, like all the force plates, biomechanics stuffs we do with other athletes. So then we could kind of see on a spectrum where we have baseline data. It's like, oh, here physiology is what actually makes an elite Hyrox athlete relative to like all these other athlete numbers. I just don't know if we have the data right now for where we have it on other athletes.
Okay. Okay.
I
Makes
think
sense.
that'd be cool.